The purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is no substitute for professional care by your doctor or your qualified healthcare professional. Never disregard or delay professional medical advice because of something you've heard on this podcast or in any linked material. Guests who speak on this podcast express their own opinions, experience, and conclusions. Dr. Shirley neither endorses nor opposes any particular opinion discussed on this podcast. The views expressed on this podcast have no relation to those of any academic, hospital, practice, institution, or other entity with which Dr. Shirley may be affiliated.
Welcome to Forever Fab, the podcast on fashion, the art of living, and all things beauty. This podcast is curated by Dr. Shirley Madhere, MD, as the definitive source of holistic wellness through beauty.
Welcome to the Forever Fab podcast, the podcast dedicated to fashion, the art of living well, and all things beauty. I'm your host, Dr. Shirley Madhere, your purveyor of this definitive source of living a beautiful life. And this week's episode is dedicated to the beauty of giving. Giving back is the new luxury. This is my interview with Sandra, Ripert, and Lise Evans. Sandra and Lise, you are both mothers. You're wives to very busy men, and you are both my friends. And I know that you are very active in the world, contributing generously to making the world a better place, and for that I'm grateful. Knowing this about you both, I'm honored that you are taking this time to speak with me today about your philanthropic efforts. So I welcome you both, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Each of you, tell me, I know a lot about both of you, but for our listeners, tell me a little bit about yourself. What's your history? What's your journey? How did you get to here?
So I was born in Norway, and I lived in Norway till I was 18 years old. I moved to Barcelona, and after Barcelona, I came to New York City. And I kind of never left. I love New York. Having lived in Hong Kong and London in the last 30 years as well, yes. I've always come back to New York. And New York is one of these places that make you feel really alive.
Yes, I would agree with that. Sandra, well, speaking of Spanish, how's your Spanish?
Not very good.
On that note, Sandra.
I'm a native New Yorker, born and raised in Brooklyn. And raised by a fabulous Puerto Rican mom who's a lovely cook and taught me how to dance and live life. I worked on Wall Street for a couple of years, and now I'm selling real estate for Douglas Elliman.
There you go. Both very busy women with full lives. So I remember how I met each of you, and it was through mutual friends. So how did the two of you meet?
That was mutual friends as well. A wonderful lady by the name of Axel. Our children went to school together at the Lycée Français, and I think it was about 13 years ago.
Yeah.
About 13 years ago.
When you were both 12.
Yeah, exactly. How did you know?
I know lots of things.
We became instant friends. I'll never forget.
But instant in the old school term, not on Instagram friends.
No, exactly.
Although I know you're both friends on Instagram.
No.
So you both do amazing things for not only for your families and your friends, but also for the world. So please tell me about your philanthropic efforts and your helping and giving to charity, not just financially, but of your time and your energy. Talk to me about why you do that.
I've been involved with City Harvest. I think it's almost 20 plus years through a friend of ours who introduced us. And City Harvest was near to us because there was a need. People were throwing away food that was in perfectly, great to feed unused food. Yeah. And so we found, that there was a need. Homeless shelters needed this food. Supermarkets, restaurants, and even companies are now involved in giving away the food that would go to waste.
Yes.
To help these shelters and people who are in need. There are like 1 in 5 children today, if you think about it, that don't know where their next warm meal is coming from. And that was personal to me, growing up, not, having the means all the time. And, my parents were on a SNAP program. So we needed food. We needed the help of the government to help us. So this is our way to give back to society and make a slight difference wherever we can.
Yes. And Lisa?
Yeah, and for me it's very different because I was lucky enough to grow up in a country like Norway where there is no such need. There isn't, we don't have homeless people. Everyone has enough, so you have food, education, healthcare. So when I came here, I was very surprised because, of course, in my mind, New York was just this fabulous city full of amazing lights and happening things and opportunities. So seeing the homeless people and sort of understanding just how different this very wealthy country, because, of course, as a Norwegian, the U.S. was everything. And to actually come and see things that hadn't been advertised. I didn't know that
Not
it was
as
like
advertised.
That. And so I started tutoring at Martin Luther King High School. And I was 19 years old, so I was very young, and met a lot of kids there, super smart kids, but just didn't have the basic, or hadn't had the basic sort of education from early on, and therefore was constantly lagging behind.
Right. So your motivations were different, but you each came to the same place.
Yes.
That giving really is a privilege and a luxury and a necessity. So do you think that philanthropy or giving, whether it's time, money, energy, whatever, is a form of activism? Are you making a statement about your beliefs or how the world should run by being philanthropic?
Absolutely.
I mean, helping each other out. Where, today you walk by these bums. Sometimes, I don't know, I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. You don't want to give them $1 or $2 or whatever it is because you don't know what they're going to do with that money. So for me, I would rather say to them, you know what? We have a food pantry. You need food. Come get food at this area, rather than giving them the $20 that you don't know what they're really going to do with it.
Right.
So yes, for me, it's a little activism as well.
I would agree.
So I'm also involved with City Harvest, but not to the extent that Sandra is. I spend a lot of my time on education and healthcare. I teach. In the inner city and saw how many kids would come to school every day, not having had breakfast, not being fed well, but also the fact that the government it has not sort of made sure that these kids get their basic early childhood education, which is a recipe for disaster. Because if you don't have, early reading skills, so that you can go to the next step and the next step and the next step, you lag behind.
Yeah.
And it's not good for us as a society either.
Right.
So you wonder why so many people are on the streets. And, I think I'm a big believer in that government has a responsibility to also pick the bottom up.
Yeah. So who taught you what you currently think about society and giving? How did you have female role models or mentors that taught you that giving was a good thing or a helpful thing?
I don't know. I think the first time I decided to do something that was giving back, I was working at J.P. Morgan. I remember back then they had a program where you can be a mentor and help somebody else, because as I was growing up, I didn't have that mentor. I didn't have, in my teens, somebody to help me with algebra. It was basically, you're on your own.
Yeah.
So the fact that J.P. Morgan introduced me to an organization where you can be a mentor, and then also Lisa introduced me to a charter school up in Harlem that was, so interesting for me to go up and spend time with these young teenagers and spend time with them and just say to them, you know what? I came from that same background, and you can make this too.
Yeah.
If you dedicate it, you stay in school, and it's so important to teach these young women and young boys that through education could be your way out of this of this life that you're living that sometimes wasn't, the most desirable.
Right.
And Lisa was one of the first one. What was the name of that charter school?
The Children's Storefront School.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah. I think my role model was my grandmother. She was one of the few people I knew who volunteered. And that's partly because in Norway there isn't that big push to volunteer because the need isn't as big as it is here.
Yes.
But she had, sadly, her husband was an alcoholic and died young, sort of often didn't come home because, he was in the park or the street somewhere just, not finding his way home. 2 of her sons ended up the same way. Oh. So she went always to volunteer at the center for, I don't know what you would even call it here, but the Center for Alcoholics and Drug Addicts.
Right,
and
like a rehabilitation center or
but
detox.
It's sort of a volunteer. You come in and out. It doesn't cost anything.
Right.
So, but she would be there volunteering.
Wow.
And I was always so impressed because I was very scared of people that were drunk or and
now you live in New York.
Now I live in New York. I'm not so scared anymore. No, but I think she was definitely someone who was always giving, and even though she had the toughest life of anyone I knew.
Yeah.
And it's not only giving money, but it's really giving your time.
Yes.
That really, to me, is a self-gratification. When we showed up a couple of, I think it was about a year or 2, and all our co-chairs showed up at the, up in Harlem at the food court. It was a special day, and we saw the lines of people, and it was freezing that day, and there were lines of people waiting for, for, what was it that we were giving out that day, Lisa? Do you remember?
Loads of vegetables.
Yeah, I thought it was fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
Yes, and that to me was really self-gratifying that we were doing something. These people were coming there for something that they really needed, and they were picking up food, going home to cook for their family.
Yeah. I agree with both of you. It does. It gives you a wonderful feeling inside that you are actually helping to make someone's life better, even if it's just one person.
Right.
And in my family, it's just been generations and generations of giving, and of course, having been born in Haiti, which is a very, very intense place.
Right.
You are compelled to give. It's just part of life.
But you know what's so interestingly with Haiti and also many African countries that I've been to, there is a warmth of the Haitian people. They may have nothing. But they give so much because they give of their spirit, they give of their time, they give love.
And they smile despite the tragedy of their environment.
They have very little to smile for. in our sort of definition of what there is to be happy about. But they give so much happiness. And often when I've made those kinds of trips, I have to say that I come back so enriched, and I feel that I've been given a lot more than I could possibly give them.
Don't you feel the same way? Like with my son at home, I'm like, wait a minute, are you throwing that away? No, I'm sorry. There are people in the world. Don't you hear yourself saying that to all your? There are people in the world who really that's their meal. It's a week meal, and you're going to throw that away? No. You put that in the refrigerator.
It's true. Which brings me to my next question: how do you teach your children? Your mothers, right? How do you teach your children to give of their time or energy or money or anything?
I think kids watch. They watch what their parents do. So for example, in my case, I watched my grandmother. And the reason why I'm saying I didn't watch my mom was a single mother who had my sister and I. She didn't really have a lot of time to go out there, but my grandmother did. I think in our household, they don't see just me doing it. But my husband, who works around the clock and mostly in China, they see that when he is around, it's about, either giving of giving money or giving time, volunteering, being, you know, out there. And I think they watch, and therefore it becomes natural.
Yeah, second
You know,
nature.
yeah.
This is what our family does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of students now. I know that my son has started something at the Lycée Français, which is really wonderful. It's, you know, all the children bring in some snack of some kind, and they all get together and they all pack together, and they know that these snacks are going to those in need. And our children, we've taken them to the repack center at City Harvest, and we've
all been there together.
I know, been there, and we show them that they have to give back.
Yeah.
And it's
but
really
also
important.
the joy that you see, because when we've
yes.
done
So
that, you see the kids, they're so excited. to pack the grapefruits and the this and the that, and knowing that the labor that they put in actually is meaningful. That, you know, it makes a difference to a lot of our neighbors in need.
It's true. And they are our neighbors.
Yeah.
So speaking of neighbors, the world needs Band-Aids as well as solutions. Which do you prefer to invest in or give your time in? The Band-Aid, which can be anything from you're going to go and volunteer one day, or the actual solution, you know, digging deep and trying to figure out policies or why the issue happens and how can it change. So how do you choose between the Band-Aid and the solution?
Well, sometimes I don't think you have the luxury of choosing.
Yeah.
Because if, of course, it's much better to work on the solution, and we all should work on the solution. But I think where we are today, in many places in the world, it seems like the solution isn't there right now, and therefore we need loads of Band-Aids.
Of Band-Aids,
and every day putting Band-Aids on. I mean, it seems like the need is just so huge.
It is overwhelming.
And with the way a lot of politics are today, the solution, I don't see it right now.
It's hard to put a Band-Aid because, you know, we have our hands crossed sometimes. You know, the politicians are, you know, cutting back more and more each day when families are in need more and more. So when you see a SNAP kind of program that helped feed my family when I was a child, now all of a sudden being cut back, now you're saying, okay, now what does City Harvest have to do? What do education, you know, we have to step up.
Yeah,
So,
as individuals.
Right, as individuals, and it's important.
And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about education. The reason why we're putting so many Band-Aids on is that the fundamental sort of building up and teaching our kids to read and write. If you cannot read or write, you are not going to be able to hold proper jobs, etc. So it's, in the end, it is us as a society that suffers.
And it's us as individuals in a society that have to reinvest in ourselves and others.
Yes.
I agree with that. And you mentioned that there's so many causes, both of you, and both of you are involved in more than one charity. How do you choose? I mean, my heart goes out to so many different causes. How do you choose what you're going to give your limited time to?
I don't know. I think City Harvest chose us because, you know, my husband owns, you know, the restaurant Le Bernardin, and he found that at the end of the day, there was a lot of food that was going to waste. And, you know, a friend of ours introduced us to this organization, and we said, okay, here's where we can make a difference. Here's where we can help. And of course, you know, it's our choice to stay involved for so many years. But, you know, Lisa, I guess you chose education because this is important to you as well. I love the children organization. As a parent, you want to, you know, you want to uplift the children.
No, and I'm a teacher. I sit on the Teachers College at Columbia, their board. Teaching, I have to say, the teachers out there that work in the inner city, in these schools, are
underpaid.
Heroes, and they're underpaid. And so when I stopped teaching on an everyday basis, it was natural for me to go, and also knowing the need, right? If you've been in that classroom, if you've seen the kids that come in every day and what they need, it becomes something that you're passionate about. And City Harvest, I love the fact that they also teach how to use the vegetables that you hand out so that families can go home and cook healthy meals. And it was Sandra and Eric who introduced us to City Harvest.
Yes.
And the thing is also, once you get to know an organization, and I think that's probably pretty much every charitable organization, and you know the work that they do and how crucial it is, you can't turn your back to it.
That's right.
And there's a real synergy between the children that she wants to teach and
Yeah.
the food that they need to eat.
I
Because if
know.
you think about it, you don't
food
feed
helps
these
the brain work.
you
Yes,
don't feed
right.
these
I know.
children, and they're 1
Yeah.
out of 5 that
Yeah.
don't know where. You don't feed these children; they're not going to be able to learn.
No.
Absolutely
on an
correct.
empty stomach. They're thinking
correct.
about, geez, my stomach is
stomach,
growling,
yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
really hungry.
Yeah.
So
There is a synergy.
there's a definite
Yeah.
synergy between what we both do
Absolutely.
and will continue doing.
Yes.
Thank goodness
Yes.
for that. Well, I love what you both said. So when someone's trying to choose, I have this ability to volunteer, to write a check, to teach, or whatever the case may be. I love that you said knowing the need. If you're in it, or if
Yeah.
you've experienced it, or if you've seen it, you
Yeah.
know the need.
Yeah.
And I also love, Sandra, what you said about making a difference. Where do you think you can really make a difference? And that difference could be literally for one person at one point in time. And then you can choose to continue. And then, Lisa, you mentioned something that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And then the last component would be potentially, if you don't know, maybe someone can make an introduction and you can start that. So
Yeah,
I love this tag teaming going on here. So how do you vet? We talked about maybe how to choose an organization. So how do you vet an organization? How do you know that they're legit, that the majority of their revenues are going to the actual people in need? How do you figure that out?
There's a standard that's rated by charities, and I don't know. I think it's like a gold. They give you a gold star or something like that. But if you Google it and you Google the charity and you find out where this money is really going, where when you donate to City Harvest, how much of that dollar is
Exactly.
going?
How much is their overhead?
Their overhead,
Because I
right.
think a lot of organizations, unfortunately, have an enormous overhead.
Ginormous.
And then you have to wonder if your dollar
Is having an impact.
Exactly. So, and I think living in New York City, there are so many smaller organizations and big organizations, but there are a lot of smaller organizations that really it's easy to really look at their budgets and see how the money is being spent.
Yeah, very true. I'll look that up, Sandra. I don't know what it is.
There's a rating system.
There's a rating
right.
system.
It's like how
That's pretty
Zagat
smart,
rates
Restaurants.
restaurants. There's a rating system. My
For
husband,
charities.
for
Okay.
charity. My husband knows the name of it, but it's really important because you want to know
Of
that
course.
they're not a fraud and they're
Yeah.
not just taking your money.
Yeah.
But they're doing something with it.
Yeah,
They're
that's the
helping
most
and making
important
a
thing,
difference.
right? Fine, you take the
Yeah.
money, but please do
Yes.
something
Yes.
legit with
Yes.
it. I love that. I'm going to look that up. Actually, I might call you later for the reference. Now, you both are deeply involved with your own personal charities. Sandra, I know you are very much involved with City Harvest, you and your husband. And then, Lisa, I know you're involved with New Yorkers for Children, and you mentioned the Teachers College at Columbia. So choose one of those and tell me what you love about each of those. So, Sandra, you can start with what you love about City Harvest. Tell me a little bit more about City Harvest and
Well,
why
first
you
of all,
love
that
it.
event that we have in April is a fun event.
Yeah.
We all get together, and it's a lot of friends, and it's a big community that really are there for one purpose and one purpose only, and it's to raise as much money as you possibly can that will help feed the 1.2 million people in New York City.
Isn't that unbelievable?
It's unbelievable
In
that
New York City.
in New York City alone there are 1.2 million people that need food.
Yeah.
And so, we have that one event, which is a lot of fun, and it's entertaining, and we're having a good time.
And it raises
And
a ton of money, which is what is needed at the
Right.
end of the day. Yeah.
That's to answer your question. That is why I get involved with City Harvest. Because I know that event, and then we have the bid event that also is a fabulous, fun event, raises money for a cause. And I remember the first year at City Harvest, I cried because we were just trying to raise $1 million. That's all we needed. And we finally raised that night for the very first time $1 million. That one night. And then you think about how many people are going to eat by $1 million worth of food, right? I think they rescue 64 million pounds of food a year. That's a lot of food there. And so now we're at $4 million. And that's incredible. That's because of New Yorkers getting together and helping their neighbors.
Yeah, for a singular
and the message going out, basically saying that you can all help. I think with City Harvest, what's wonderful is that the dollars translate into food so easily, right? Other organizations, it's harder to say, for your gift of $1,000, let's say, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. It doesn't mean it's not as important. It's just harder to really translate it. Whereas City Harvest is wonderful because even if you give $5,
here's a direct translation. $1 that you donate gets 4 pounds of food for $1. Right?
So that's wonderful. I'm devoting my time and our sort of philanthropic money to a few different charities, one of which is New Yorkers for Children. And the reason why I sort of got involved with them is that when I was teaching, I saw kids that were coming from families that parents were involved. I had homeless kids. I had a bunch of kids in foster care. Many foster care families are wonderful. But there are also foster care families that are not great. And these kids need better parents than any other kid because they've missed their parents and they're sort of placed by the government in these families. And New Yorkers for Children not only mentor these kids, prepare them for tests that they have to take. They basically kind of parent them or try to fill a lot of the gaps that sadly these kids experience. And that was something that really spoke to me. It
resonated with you. I mean, the children, it's such a sad situation when you see that children are suffering. I watched something on television the other night about the refugee system. Goodness.
That's where you have to
in the world are there?
And that's where when you talk about band-aids or policies, it's like, wow, God, could we just start all over again and make the world, a beautiful place for everyone to be?
Well, hopefully we'll do that one person at a time.
Right.
Sometimes charitable giving can be deeply personal, as you both explained. Sandra for you and the SNAP program, and Lisa for you is teaching. If it isn't deeply personal for another individual, how do you engage people to give? How do you motivate them to get engaged and involved? That's a tough one, right?
I think it is deeply personal for every single human being. They just don't know it yet. Because I do think that when you go out there, and because we're humans, and the people in need are humans, and once you connect with them, you actually discover things about yourself that, I have to say, through all the work that I've done with underprivileged populations in New York City, this country, Africa, Haiti, there isn't a day that I've been out in the field or, that I don't come back and feel so enriched. And I think it's just going out there and getting to know who you are, actually.
Reconnecting. You're connecting with people, but you're also reconnecting with yourself. Because as you said, no matter how we look, how we feel about politics or issues, whatever the case may be, when you get back to it, we're all human and we have that in common. So if we can remember that, then that may be a way to get people more engaged and involved. Like, well, you're human too. And you may have had this life, but you're still
and there, for the grace of God go I. Sometimes you think to yourself, life is beautiful right now.
It is.
But that could be me. That could be me not knowing where my next meal comes from. God forbid if I lose my job, or you know what, it's a nice thing to say, okay, look, I'm living a very comfortable life right now, but tomorrow things could change. So you would want somebody to help you. So
Absolutely.
give back and make that difference. It really is for me, it makes me wake up every day knowing that I made that little bit of a difference.
Yeah.
It's motivational and purpose. I have a sense
Satisfactory.
of purpose.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that. I think that's another thing that we all share in common as humans. We all have a purpose. And I think that purpose is to not only for us to live our best lives ever, but to help others to live their best lives ever. And I think that does include giving back in the way that you can. So speaking about best life ever, each of you or together collectively, what are this is the Fab Five.
The Fab Five.
The Fab Five!
Those are Fab Fives.
We did like So what are your top 5 recommendations for living a beautiful life and or helping someone else to live a beautiful life?
I mean, I'm gonna start with laughter and learning. I mean, like, I love to laugh.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things
Yes,
because
you
I
do.
think it's
You both
contagious.
have
You know,
amazing
if we share a laugh, then someone will laugh with us. And learning every day, just get up and say, okay, today I want to learn something new.
And try to love, because often we get distracted or caught up by actually most of the time absolutely silly little nothings. So fight less, love more.
Love that.
At home, away.
At home, fight less at home. So subject for another podcast.
Exactly.
Spend time with family.
Yes.
I mean, real quality time. Spend time with family. Spend time with friends.
Yeah.
You know, for me, my friends are like my family.
Yeah.
And you all know this because I get you all together.
Yes.
Where are you? I need you one-on-one
Yes.
time. Let's have dinners. Let's have a coffee. Let's
Yes.
take a walk.
Yes, you're great at that.
Right?
Thank you.
I'm
Yeah.
constantly reminding us, we need to get together.
And
see each other.
togetherness is really, and this is also going back to, when you are together with people that you don't know as well, and people in need. And there is a trust and a friendship that is built there that is so tangible or so fragile in many ways, but so beautiful.
Precious, yes.
But I agree, family, friends. For me, nature is really important. So I think we're very lucky in New York that we have this amazing park.
Yes.
I find spending time there every day, which I do with my dog, is time to just breathe and I guess it's my version of meditation.
That's your active meditation.
My meditation is getting on that Peloton and so I work out every day just so that I can just, start the day right, just getting all that energy, going and, staying in shape. I mean, I don't meditate. My husband is the meditator. He sits there, for 20 minutes a day. My meditation is at the gym, getting my exercise.
Okay, so that was 4 in total. So what's
Enjoying
the last one?
food.
Oh,
goodness.
we love sharing food
Oh,
together.
yes.
Sharing good food, good meals,
Yes.
taking the time to make them and that actually goes back again to City Harvest. The fact that City Harvest actually takes the time to teach. So how to cook a squash, right? Yes. And the enjoyment that you get from the cooking lesson, and then enjoy what you eat later. The whole togetherness in food is so important.
Take a seat at my table. Let's share a meal.
So that was your Fab 5. And I know, Lisa, you mentioned earlier, we'll call this a bonus of the Fab 5, is giving back, right? The both of you.
That part. Which, maybe the most important one. But they all actually, if you're with a friend and you talk about friendships, you are giving.
Absolutely.
You're taking and giving.
That's right.
But taking without giving means nothing.
Means nothing. That's right. And again, what we all talked about during this podcast is that giving could come in so many forms. It doesn't have to be a check. It doesn't have to be, a coin. It could be time. It could be your ideas, right? It could be just being there for someone who needs someone to have, to bounce something off of. So I love this topic, and I love the both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shirley.
You've been listening to my interview with Sandra Ripert and Lise Evans on the beauty of philanthropy and giving back is the new luxury. To those of you who are listening to this podcast, please consider enhancing your life by helping to make someone else's life more beautiful. And there are a number of charities that you can give to. And we talked about City Harvest, New Yorkers for Children. We talked about Summer Steps in Southampton, Fresh Air Home, the museum, Whitney Museum, New York Presbyterian, whatever you're passionate about, there's something that you can do. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Forever Fab Podcast. Until then, next time, stay beautiful inside and out. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Shirley.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Forever Fab, the podcast on fashion, the art of living, and all things beauty, curated by Dr. Shirley Madhere, MD. Live beautifully and help make the world a more beautiful place.